morning, folks. Today's episode brought to you by one of my favorite sponsors, sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST. You will get 20% off. What will you get 20% off? You'll get 20% off at tinctures. Tinctures that will help you go to sleep. Tinctures that will help you relax. Tinctures that are in 3 different flavors and 4 different concentrations of strength. Doesn't matter. You can check it out on their website at sunsetlakesebede.com. But there you'll also find flour and keef and pre-rolls. You'll also find Sebede fudge and Sebede coffee, sour gummies and gummies that help you focus, gummies that help you relax, gummies that help you sleep, gummies that just help you chill out a little bit when maybe your kids are being a little bit difficult, or you have to visit your loved one's parents on a holiday, for instance. That might be a good time to take a lot of those. Believe me. sunsetlakesebede.com, third-party tested. All of their results are on their website. You can see exactly what's in the products you buy. And they're a great company, great business practices, mostly employee-owned, $20 minimum wage. They are movement partners. They're involved in things like mutual aid up in Vermont, and they've donated tens of thousands of dollars to things like strike relief funds and food pantries and Planned Parenthood and refugee resettlement and carceral reform and Give Directly. On and on and on. Can't say enough about how great this company is and, frankly, how great their product is. It helps me sleep. And that's priceless. But actually, there is an actual price associated with it on their website. And you get 20% off that price by using Left is Best. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 10th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Osita Nwanevu, contributing editor at The New Republic, columnist at The Guardian, author of the upcoming book, The Right People, Democracy and the Case for a New American Founding. Meanwhile, Donald Trump locks in his convicted felony status. Going to be the first president ever to be a convicted felon.
Number one.
After the Supreme Court rejects his attempt to stop a sentencing hearing today. At least 10 people dead, over 10,000 structures destroyed in LA fires, some of which continue to rage. Meanwhile, not coincidentally, 2024 was the Earth's hottest recorded year ever, exceeding the 1.5 Celsius warming limit. Meta's new speech rules are released, or I should say leaked, and they're returning to their Myanmar genocidal roots. Gaza official death tally at over 46,000. But a new Lancet study shows that that's likely nearly underreported by half. House passes a bill to sanction the International Criminal Court if it even deigns to investigate Israeli actions. And the bill to deport migrants merely accused of shoplifting and other nonviolent crimes, just an accusal, and giving states a right to challenge federal supremacy over immigration, moves towards passage in the Senate as many Senate Democrats cave. And ding dong, Anita Bryant dead. Coincidentally, I was off yesterday. Loper Bright strikes again. Bush-appointed judge throws out Title IX protections for students who are trans or pregnant. The TikTok case heard at the Supreme Court today. All this and more on today's Majority Report.
Hello, hello.
Hello, folks. How are you? Emma, how's your day going?
Casual Friday.
It is Casual Friday. And look how casual I am.
I know. You're collarless.
I just said to heck with it. I actually had a laundry snafu. So
yeah?
I had,
what does that mean?
I have a whole system of laundry stuff based upon whether or not my kids are with me on that week and what I think I can get away with. And I miscalculated with a shirt. It's a shirt that I should have not worn during the week in a casual situation. And now this is it. So. But we don't need to spend too much time on that.
You have such limited inventory. It's bizarre, but
Well, it's not. I don't have limited inventory. It's just like there's very specific things that I need to wear on a specific day, and I have a backup. I don't want to get into it too much.
Okay, so you just have compulsions.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's accurate. Let's talk about the. We'll get to the sentencing hearing later in terms of sound. It is an important thing to note how Donald Trump was found guilty of something, and essentially the Supreme Court has limited the ability of a president or a president-elect, for that matter, to be as accountable as any other citizen would be for criminal acts. And I think Osita will have something to say about that. His new book is about American democracy. But before we get there, obviously, incredible destruction out in LA. At least 10,000 structures destroyed, 10 people dead, which is based upon the amount of destruction, sort of amazing. The winds out there were incredible, sometimes hitting 100 miles an hour. I'm sure people have seen the video of these firestorms, essentially, that were blazing.
Right.
A lot has been made about whether the LA Fire Department was sufficiently prepared and resourced to deal with something like this. And the fact of the matter is, ultimately, and there was some initial reports that the LA fire budget was cut by $50 million.
17, but then there's also these counterclaims about a $50 million fund that's in waiting. And you can, I took the bait and got into the weeds on some of this stuff, but I think overall, what's frustrating about this discourse is that even if it were true, we should be focusing not really on city budgetary issues in single-digit percentages as it relates to this story. It's about the capitalist climate criminals who have created the conditions that are leading us to these disasters.
Well, there's no doubt, and let's just listen from the horse's mouth, as it were. This is Los Angeles fire chief. It's quite clear that there was a $17 million budget cut, and the fire chief, like all agency heads, was sounding the alarm about this about a month ago. And they had to make some hard choices in terms of getting rid of maybe things that weren't emergency response functions of the fire department. Probably just as important. But the bottom line is she says it basically at the end of this interview, which is nothing was going to stop this. We don't know how these fires started. I have some speculation. But the bottom line is this is a story about climate change. And this is a story about a mentality that we have broadly in this country. Certainly, in terms of lawmakers and frankly, voters who would undoubtedly punish, on one hand, you hear the story, there's too many high taxes in California. And then on the other hand, you're saying, well, you're not spending enough on, fire prevention. Of course, nobody else is saying that until the day after a fire rips through everything. Yeah. But the bottom line is we as a people are not mentally prepared. And we are certainly vastly under-resourced, like vastly under-resourced. And frankly, incorrectly structured as a society to deal with climate change. There hasn't been a drop of rain out in LA for 6-7 months now. When these type of winds, Santa Ana winds come, usually the ground is at least a little bit moist. There's a little bit of rain, at least this time of year out in LA, but it's just not happening. But here is Christian Crowley, Los Angeles fire chief, on with Nora O'Donnell. This was yesterday.
Asked you because a lot of people are talking about the warning that you sent last month that the budget cuts have, quote, severely limited the department's capacity to prepare for, train for, and respond to large-scale emergencies, including wildfires. You sent that warning about these budget cuts. Was this preventable?
I tell you, from the budget cut side of things, when there's a $17 million cut in our budget, operating costs, immediately from that point, I had to make some tough decisions. I looked at some other duties and responsibilities that we do as a fire department and had to focus right back on the training of our firefighters and also our ability to respond to the everyday fires and EMS response.
Would that $17 million that had been cut from your budget have made a difference in this fight?
I would say with the lean forward posture that we took, knowing that a $17 million cut we had to take from somewhere, and that was from the non-essential duties and responsibilities that as a fire department we have taken on over the past many, many years.
But with all due respect, in December you had warned that the budget cuts would severely limit your ability to respond to large-scale emergencies. Is that true or not?
Yes, so I would say yes, we were limited to a certain factor, yes.
And let me ask you about how that limited your response, because in the early hours of the wildfires, especially in the Pacific Palisades, we had a team on the ground, a crew there with a reporter, and witnessed number of homes burned to the ground, and there was not a fire truck in sight. How did that happen?
We pre-deployed the most amount of emergency resources that we could with what we had. With the pre-deployment, when the fire takes off, we're going to push as many resources that we can at that particular incident. And that's what we did. We did exactly what we could with what we had.
So you're saying you didn't have enough resources?
Oh my God.
I would say in a wind event like this that we are living today in day 3, something that is as significant as this particular fire, I would say we threw exactly what we could with what we had. So if I had 1,000 engines to throw at this fire, I honestly don't think 1,000 engines at that very moment could have tapped this fire down.
Chief,
it's just
they've cut it up a little bit weird, and we didn't do that. Incidentally, that seems like there. But the bottom
that's
line
the only
is,
question you're asking. I mean,
no, this is a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question, but the bottom line is $17 million in this instance is not going to make a single difference in this fire. The bottom line is that as a society, we have not come to grips with the idea that climate change is real. There are going to be huge, we're going to have to do something radically different because we are basically at the precipice of being unable to stop the ball rolling. I mean, we should still try and mitigate because it could be a lot worse than it is now. But I mean, this is like essentially saying, the mayor didn't have enough boats prepared for when Miami goes underwater because of climate change. I mean, we're going to have to start to realize, like, there are areas where you're not going to be able to build. There are cities that we have that we may have to evacuate. We're not even remotely close to grasping this. And the talk of 17 million is small bore stuff.
Yep.
When you're talking about all these fire set. Now, it could be stuff like, there's at least one person has been taken into custody under suspicion of arson. There's other, theories that arson was started. I mean, it's amazing to contemplate that all of these fires basically kept popping up in distances that were probably unlikely about embers in certain situations. But when you talk about Altadena, you've got an older community. You've got a lot of electrical wires that are above ground. You've got high winds. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being, an electrical fire there. When you've got a city like LA, you got to put all that stuff underground. You got to put all that electrical stuff underground. It's going to cost billions and billions of dollars. And now, they're talking about damages that are running in 50 billion, 60 billion. We don't even know where it's going to be at the end of this. And who wants to put a bet on whether Donald Trump is going to leverage this in California in some way? Who wants to put a bet on this?
Oh, I'm sure his political enemies. And the thing is like, again, there's the fact that I think it's natural for people to look for someone to blame. And part of what's just a little annoying to me about this story is that this is a much larger issue than any budgetary decision or whatever money was set aside. Oh, they're negotiating, whatever. It's not really a cut. It is a cut. The point is that if this is your focus right now, and it's 80% of what I'm seeing, and this is excluding people who are in LA and like having to deal with the city management and like the Democrats in cities. You don't have to preach to me. We deal with it in New York. And the fact that so much more money went to cops where it could have been reallocated elsewhere. That is a problem in major cities across the country. But this isn't about LA City in the same, that's a part of it. The overall macro point is that, as you mentioned in headlines, we've crossed that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold in the year 2024, the hottest year on record, which means that the Paris climate goals won't be reached. And we're setting off a chain reaction of more of these kinds of disasters. And like the New York Post and Fox News on a national stage are the ones that are most focused on this budget thing because they can blame Democratic mayors. Let's not really, from a national perspective, give in to that impulse, because we have to be focusing on these climate criminals who are killing all of us. This isn't a regional thing. This is an international crime by oil and gas.
Play out over and over again, because you're going to see a bunch of billionaires. There's no way the insurance companies are going to be able to cover this to the extent that they hadn't already pulled out of LA. The federal government is not going to give this money because Donald Trump is going to basically auction off this area to the highest billionaire bidders. And we are basically watching what this entire process, just like we saw with New Orleans to a certain extent. This is a microcosm of the dynamic that is going to continue and escalate in the coming years. All right, we got to take a break in a moment. And we'll be talking to Osita Nwanevu in a moment. But first, a couple words from our sponsors. These guys have returned, which is great because I have not stopped eating their cereal. Everybody as a kid loved eating cereal. You want to feed it to your kids, except for you realize like, oh my God, I'm handing them a pound of sugar every morning. Then this happened, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more. Magic Spoon. It's a little bit of nostalgia, but it's a delicious cereal that just tastes like your childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. Magic Spoon has also turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's treats are so delicious, they have already become my favorite snacky that I have in the office when my tiny little breakfast has run out of my system. Every serving of Magic Spoon high protein cereal has great macros, as they say: 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs. They come in a bunch of different flavors. My new favorite now, I would say, is cocoa and peanut butter and cinnamon roll, those 3. But they've got all sorts of other flavors. They got fruity, they got birthday cake, they got chocolate chip cookie, and more. They got these high protein treats. They are delicious. It's an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. But the bottom line is, for me, great stuff to give the kids. It tastes just like the crappy stuff that they want, but it actually is healthy for them. That's the thing that really does it for me. And then, you get good protein, you get all that, but the lack of sugar is what really does it. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/majority report, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/majority report for $5 off. Also, I use all these products, but the best part about doing these ads is it reminds me to take my pills on the days that I forget to take them. While back, I was experiencing a little bit of thinning up top, or feeling like it was going to happen. I wanted to avoid that, but I didn't want to take any drugs. So what did I do? Nutrafol. It is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand. It is trusted by over 1 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. That's what's happened for me. And thinning hair is different for men and women. Years ago, they wanted us to sponsor. They wanted to sponsor the program. We didn't have anybody who wanted to try it. Since then, both Emma and I know women who have taken Nutrafol and had great success with it. But the idea is that thinning hair is different for women and men. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men, multiple formulas for women that are tailored to different life stages, such as postpartum or menopause, and lifestyle factors, such as a plant-based lifestyle, so you can get what you need. Physician formulated, 100% drug-free ingredients. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism, through whole body health. And the thing about Nutrafol is they don't just study the ingredients in their supplements. They clinically test final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol Men Hair Growth Supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol Women Hair Growth Supplement for 6 months as well. With a Nutrafol subscription, building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription needed. Automated deliveries, free shipping, keep you on track. Plus, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and Headspace membership is included too, because that's under your hair. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription, free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com, enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. And of course, we'll put a link in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. And lastly, I've talked about these guys a bunch, but you want to cook something good for your kids or your family or yourself for that matter, and you want a wide variety of stuff and you want fresh ingredients. For me, I also want something where there's very little cleanup and it can take very little time to prepare. And that's why I use HelloFresh. If you're tired of figuring out what's for dinner at night after night, tired of going to the supermarket to buy this stuff, you can get dinner done the easy way. I want to thank HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit, for supporting the Majority Report. And here's an offer from HelloFresh. Get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/majority10FM. That's majority10FM. You can find, like, they got 50 things on a menu, and they give you a menu for each week, so you can plan like 5 weeks out in advance. I got this thing where I got a mushroom chowder, which I was like a little bit worried that Saul would not like. But then I also got a pork bowl type of thing with rice in it. I love the chowder. He loved the pork thing. So I made both one night because each one of them only took 15, 20 minutes each. And then we had leftovers the next day of the ones that we liked.
Very nice.
They got prep and bake meals, minimal mess, some with only 5 minutes of prep. So your oven does most of the work for you, not you. Get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/majority10FM. Majority10FM. That's one item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/majority10FM. We got to get in on maybe standardizing the coupon codes. That's Majority10FM. We will put a link and that coupon code at our YouTube and podcast description and at majority.fm. Quick break. Osita Nwanevu will be with us in a second. We are back. Emma Vigeland, Sam Seder, Majority Report. Joining us now, Osita Nwanevu. He is a contributing editor at The New Republic, columnist at The Guardian, author of the upcoming book, The Right of the People, Democracy and the Case for a New American Founding, coming out in March. Is that right?
Coming out in August, actually.
Oh, in August.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
can we
later in the
pre-order
year,
yet?
but you can right now.
Should we? What's the best?
Absolutely.
All right.
I will be urging people to do so an annoying number of times between now and August, but you can right now.
Happy to help in that endeavor.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with this. Donald Trump was sentenced today, and this is in the hush money case. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is sort of, I guess, waiting on a couple of days to release the report, at least one of the reports by Jack Smith on the January 6th, essentially coup attempt, in my opinion. And perhaps we will see at least parts of the documents case. But I was struck in this sentencing today where Judge Machon said that essentially Trump getting what is it called? I don't even remember now. Getting the
unconditional discharge.
Getting an unconditional discharge was the only lawful sentence that the judge could impose under the circumstances. Those circumstances are that the Supreme Court has basically said he's above the law, or he's not above the law. It's just that he can't be held accountable for any law breaking that he does. What are the implications of this in terms of I think Trump feels, it mars his history books, I guess, a little bit, but it's also got a signal to him I'm pretty golden.
Yeah. I mean, if Trump doesn't already feel that way for a million other reasons, then then there's something wrong. I mean, I think Trump's been given a lot of reasons over the course of his political career so far to think that he is above the law. They think that he's not going to be held accountable by our institutions. That just seems to be the way the things have worked out for him in general. I mean, myself, I knew as soon as he won the election that all these legal cases were going to fizzle out in this kind of a way. People had a lot of expectation, I think, before the election that the Manhattan trial and the other things he had on the docket were going to hurt him with the electorate in ways that never really bore out. So, I think that Trump has to have the understanding now, has to have already had the understanding that he's kind of unbound by our institutions, that there haven't really been ways in which they've succeeded in reining him in. I always remember after, I think, he was impeached, he gave this speech, I think it was at CPAC or some other event, where he was talking about how the impeachment process, many people were writing, was going to rein him in. And he was like, no, actually, I got worse. I was emboldened by my ability to sort of get off here. And I don't know, I think I, like many Americans who've been following this, feel kind of cynical about our capacity to do anything. It seems to sort of dial Trump's power back, to rein him in as though he were a normal person under the law. That doesn't seem to be a thing that's ever been operative for Donald Trump.
All right, so that's in terms of Trump's perspective on this. What does it say? What's your sense of where the American public is on this, broadly speaking? Because it feels like the reaction from the American public is important in terms of these accountability questions. Maybe, well, not maybe. I think definitely more so than Donald Trump's. What's striking is that there's a blasé quality to this.
Yeah. Well, all the polls that I've seen on, whether it's January 6th, whether it's a hush money trial, whatever the particular case on the in the news happens to be, you usually get majorities or at least pluralities of the American people saying, yeah, we think Donald Trump did something wrong here. It's not the case that you have this kind of huge proportion of Americans who think that Donald Trump is being wronged and that these cases are unfair. Republicans think that, but the general public has always sort of understood Trump as a kind of a crook, somebody who's not playing by the rules. But obviously, I think that we can credit the result of the election in November to the fact that that's not a deal breaker for a lot of Americans. I think that a lot of Americans kind of take it for granted that we have a legal system in which wealthy people aren't treated the same way as ordinary people. It's just something that Donald Trump did not create, but is sort of representative of. And I think that there's a cynicism about it. A lot of Americans who said, look, we know that Donald Trump is a crook. We know that he has all these ways that he runs up against or undermines our institutions. But, I don't really respect our legal system. I don't really respect our institutions. And so, there are other things that are going to be more important to me in this election. And I'm going to vote for him or consider voting for him on that basis, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of cynicism about the extent to which our institutions can rein wealthy and powerful people in. And I think there are a lot of people who say, hell, if this is the way the system works, might as well get like a wealthy, powerful person who dislikes the same people I like, or who's entertaining, or doesn't seem to follow, the same kind of political norms as everybody else does. Maybe you should just throw in with that guy. If the people who actually prevail in the system aren't ordinary people, but choose your preferred billionaire or millionaire to advocate for your interests.
Or it's that he is hated by the people that I hate, right? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
we're later in our show, I'm sure we'll play some of the footage from the Jimmy Carter funeral in the Capitol. And, to see how Bush doesn't acknowledge Trump, but Obama's sitting there and palling around with him. And, I do think that at the core, and I didn't see this, I think, at the time fully during the Harris campaign, is the embrace of Liz Cheney for a voting population that's going to be making decisions about voting for Trump based on less information. We know that he won over lower information voters, or people who don't consume political news regularly or primarily get it from social media. The people that know that Liz Cheney didn't think that Trump won the election in 2020 are 100% of those people are voting for Kamala Harris. But when you have the Cheney name, and then you have the Bushes, and Trump came on the political scene mocking Jeb Bush, and he helped kill that political dynasty and went after the Iraq War. He's hated by both Democrats and establishment Republicans. And I think that may be one of the big core things that core elements of his appeal for that voting population that carried him over the finish line.
Yeah, I think that there are some Americans, as you say, who feel nothing but antipathy for the Cheney name. They remember the Bush administration, remember being lied to about Iraq, and so Liz Cheney in their minds is a villain. I think that's true of a certain constituency of Americans. But I also think there are many more Americans who sort of saw those ads and saw the messaging about Liz Cheney and were just like, who is this and why should I care? This seems like another institutional figure. I don't necessarily know who Liz Cheney is, but this person we're trotting out saying, Trump is breaking all of those rules, is, whoever they are, stand-in for politics as usual, and we don't think politics as usual really works. And there's nothing that sort of makes us deferential to the system of values that Liz Cheney is being trotted out to uphold. So it was either, to my mind, people who saw that messaging and who were repulsed by it actively, and also, on the other hand, people who saw the messaging and just sort of saw it as kind of irrelevant and not, pertinent to their concerns that actually motivated them in the election. Either way, it was a loser. I think we can say that pretty definitively. And the fact that people invested so much energy and time on the Democratic side, the strategists who thought it was going to unlock the suburbs and unlock this hidden constituency for Republican voters. I mean, we all know that wasn't true, and people were saying it wasn't going to happen, before the election. I just, there was so much about the election that was not a surprise. I think it was, there were people who disbelieved all the information that we had coming from the polls, and there are people who just told themselves a kind of fantastical story about what most Americans were going to care about come November. There's just a lot of delusion that it's even now, months after the fact, easy for me to get kind of angry and annoyed thinking about.
Well, let's get you a little bit more angry and annoyed and talk about how the Democrats are reacting presently. I mean, I think, I think we're going to come to find, and there's, I'm starting to see some data that basically says, this was not about people voting for Biden and voting for Trump. I think there was a similar amount of people who defected from Biden to Trump, that defected from Trump to Biden. Relatively speaking, a small percentage of that, but there were about 19 million voters, if you account for like how the electorate has expanded, that didn't show up, that should have showed up or had showed up in 2020 to vote against Donald Trump, and voted for Biden, and didn't show up this time around to vote, in part because what the campaign was offering was not inspiring enough to them, or maybe they stayed home because they were upset about what was going on with Gaza, or maybe they stayed home because the Cheney fed into the Gaza narrative. I mean, it could have been any of those things, but the bottom line is there was a massive cohort of people who were not, who should have showed up, or at least were gettable at least 4 years ago and didn't show up. The Democrats seem to have taken to the extent that the Democrats as a entity can take a lesson, and I'm skeptical of that. But individual Democrats seem to have taken bought into an idea that they should capitulate and sort of like meet Trump halfway in some way. I mean, I'm talking about like the ICC is not the terribly different vote than we had in the House, but this immigration bill is reprehensible, and it's going to pass in the Senate now. You only had about, was it 8 or 9 Democrats who voted against cloture. Give me your perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats now, I think Schumer included, are saying, well, we're going to amend the bill. It's not the final bill and so on. We're just voting to advance it, and we'll have like a conversation, a debate about it. This is not a bill that should have advanced. It is from top to bottom, fully and thoroughly reprehensible. And in general, beyond this bill, I think if we had a kind of reasonable and real opposition party in this country, we'd have people asking questions, well, why should we be making immigration policy with Donald Trump at all? Like, why aren't we spending all of our energy and all of our time trying to convince the American people that his message on immigration is wrong, that immigrants are good for our society, and trying to build up a majority in this country, again, for comprehensive immigration reform? That's what we should be doing, even beyond and above this bill. But, I can't say that I'm surprised that so many Democrats have found it easy to just sort of take the bait here, and just sort of capitulate in this kind of way. That's what Democrats, I think, tend to do when they lose, instead of trying to figure out how they can, advance their own message and counter the right in a more compelling way. They adopt the right wing's framing, and this is what they did with the border bill last year. They thought it was going to unlock the election for them, right? So we voted for this big, bad, strong border bill. It was written by James Langford, and Donald Trump called Republicans and told them not to pass it, and that's bad because we're actually the candidates that want to strengthen the border. We care about the immigrants coming in and committing these crimes, and it did not work at all, not even slightly.
This is Obama's. This was Obama's formula too, though, right? I mean, his whole thing was, I'm going to show you how many people I can deport. Right. Did in fact deport more people than Donald Trump did. 100%. And I'm going to show you, and that's going to open up, that's going to unlock this thing. It is, they are fighting a sort of like a, I don't know, some type of like rear guard. They're fighting exclusively a rear guard battle, and assuming this is the way they move forward. It's just bizarre. But with that said, it worked for Obama as an individual, and you've got senators out there who are clearly sort of making a calculation, what's going to work for me as an individual. And right. I mean, this seems like a total failure of leadership at the top of the Democratic Party. I don't even know which leader to blame. Like, who is it that's even, like leading this? Does Obama do it in between, pitches of like TV scripts, or what's happening here?
No, I mean, the leadership materializes whenever the left seems like it's able to win, maybe, once you start winning some primaries, once, it seems like progressives are getting the upper hand in some way, then this kind of deep and strong internal party infrastructure manifests itself immediately, and things happen. Absent that kind of threat to the established order of things in the Democratic Party, it doesn't seem like there is a lot of leadership. It is kind of everybody trying to fend for themselves in these very craven and predictable ways. I think Ruben Gallego in Arizona is a perfect example of this. Gallego, I remember what sticks out about him most strongly in my mind is that after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he came out very strongly for banning all Russian students from the United States, kicking all of them out as a response to Putin's invasion, saying, these are all the kids of these rich oligarchs who are, supporting Vladimir Putin, and they should all be punished as retaliation, which was stupid and horrible, and a capitulation to a kind of Trumpism. This was years ago, and I remember thinking to myself, this tells you exactly who this person is, and it illustrates too this impulse in the Democratic Party to always respond by trying to make yourself seem like you're going to outdo the right at being the right? And that's exactly what Gallego in particular is doing now. I mean, he said that he wants to sponsor the Riley Act, not just vote for it, but he's backing it to the hilt. So I mean, I think that he is indicative of this broader kind of mentality that you're talking about, that Democrats, for every reason, think that the solution is always, we seem weak, and we don't seem muscular enough on this issue, so we need to become more reactionary. And if we do that, we're going to peel away these voters. And it doesn't work. All you're doing is reifying and solidifying the right's basic framing of the world. And if you do that, people who are concerned about immigration on that basis are going to turn to the right. They're not going to choose the weak sauce version of Donald Trump. They're going to choose the actual thing. And the other thing I think about here, too, is that the current place we're in on immigration didn't come about by accident. Republicans worked really hard over the last decade or so to change public opinion on immigration. I remember back in, I guess it was middle school or whatever when the 2008 election happened, but Tom Tancredo, running the Republican primary that year.
Osita,
sorry, I didn't mean to. But just
I think Emma was born then.
Right. But just to give people a sense of like the long-term trajectory here, people laughed at Tom Tancredo. This is years before Trump. This is not the kind of immigration politics that has any future in the Democratic Party. Look, even George W. Bush has been backing comprehensive immigration reform. This is a bipartisan thing and so on. And Republicans, Donald Trump included, but not exclusive to him, have done a lot of legwork to try to get people to blame immigrants for the structural problems we face in American society. There's a point under Trump where it didn't seem like this was going to work. Actually, the implementation of his policies generates this backlash and actually increases the number of people who say they support immigration. But after he leaves office, there is this kind of argumentative vacuum. You have Republicans who are busing migrants over to Democratic cities that they know are not going to be able to handle it in like a stable, orderly way, intentionally to try to get people angry. You have Republicans taking on or sort of taking up these stories, like the Laken Riley story, finding every example of an immigrant committing a crime they can think of and blowing that up and elevating it, out of the faith that if they just kept at it and they kept bludgeoning the political discourse, they would eventually generate a majority of Americans who would oppose or who would support Trump's immigration policies, especially in the absence of a strong counterargument for Democrats. And I say all of that to just sort of make the broader point that Democrats don't believe you can do this. I don't think I've ever seen in my entire life a concerted effort by the Democratic Party to actively change public opinion on an issue 100%. That they're losing on,
Can you imagine?
I can cite a half a dozen. I mean, I just like the amazing, I'll just add to that. I think it was reported that Obama, in his pivot to austerity in 2010, said, I'm not going to try and explain to people that the deficit's not, important now. And then 7 years later, the deficit completely evaporates as an issue for Republicans. I'll also add, just to emphasize your point here in terms of George Bush, in I think it was 04 or 05, tried to do that comprehensive immigration plan because Karl Rove had basically told him we need to get Latino voters, and it was like talk radio, frankly. Mark Levin and Laura Ingraham that really and others who really ended up canning that entire, damaging Bush significantly in that fight. And this has been something they've been doing for a long time. But they recognize that public opinion is malleable. I mean, the people did that because they had this faith that if we
sort of hone in on the right ways to talk about this issue, we'll get people on our side. And that's exactly what Democrats should be doing now in the opposite direction. What can we do to actually repair people's faith in immigration, to convince people that they're assets to society? And the absence of any of that is really, it's terrible to think about. It's terrible that we're in the middle of this era now, 10 years into Donald Trump, without any kind of real robust effort by the part of people who are supposed to be the opposition to counter this message in a strong way. And it just sort of signals the ways in which I don't think Democrats really believe in politics.
Well, but I just want to make this point because before I lose it, because Osita, you made this about how the Republicans will pick every story to make their case, like Lake and Riley. Can you imagine if the Democrats did that for every person that was killed because their claim was denied, or because if they decided to make a John Miller Act because he had cancer and couldn't afford the bills and became bankrupt,
100%.
That is what doing politics would be for their agenda. But instead, we're 10 years after Donald Trump has come onto the political scene, where there were protests at airports at the beginning of 2017 to protest the Muslim ban. This is xenophobia. This is racist.
Right.
Where are we at 10 years later? We're about to pass the Lake and Riley Act to help the Republicans demonize immigrants more.
What is it that you think? What is it about Democrats that they are? That in these situations, because I remember this from, in the aughts, I was not in middle school. I was well into my career at that point, into a second career. But at that time, there was okay, we're 3 years out. The country's still in shock, and Democrats are incapable of the finding a spine to actually sort of sell a different vision of what we should be doing in the context of, let's say, the global war on terror, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
But here it seems like this is a pathology as opposed to, and I think there are members of the Democratic Party who are ideologically, it's a wider tent, but I also think there's a lot of them who are whatever is going to get me reelected, I'll do. And they don't seem to understand, how you create sort of support in some fashion. What that tendency, they could have spent their time and saying we're going to do the, Jose, Zapata Act. I'm just picking a name. And this is a guy who came here, was brought here at 9 years old by his parents, and has created a business, a small grocery store, and pays, 20 people. And we want more of that. And, or whatever it is, this is someone who went to, came here as a child, or came here and went into the military and, won a Purple Heart or something to that effect. Why don't Democrats feel in these situations that they can, that it's worth it to offer a competing story?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I do think that there is a difference between why many Democrats are in politics and why many Republicans are, that goes some way towards explaining this. I think that there are a lot of Republicans in politics because they being conservative means something to them, and they want to enact a kind of conservative vision for America. We believe in these hierarchies that we think are definitional for this country, that stabilize this country. We believe in a market where, by the dint of your own whatever, you can get rich and blah blah blah. And I think that that's a way that a lot of conservatives, either genuinely interpret the world or realize it is to their benefit to pretend as though that's the way that they generally interpret the world. I think a lot of Democrats, by contrast, are in politics because it's a neat gig. You have all of these people who don't retire. Sometimes you'll hear from them. Why have you been in office for so long? Jerry Connolly winning over AOC in the oversight race is a good example of this. There's an interview he did where he was like, well, look, like, it's kind of my turn here. Like, I've been here for so long.
That's what's important.
You know, it's just kind of, this is just kind of how it works. Like, you get your seniority and you find a winning position. That is the way I think so many Democrats, in the absence of like any kind of ideological core, approach politics. I don't think they even see necessarily the absence of vision as a problem. Look, most members of Congress on both sides are in pretty safe seats at this point. You know, Democrats might lose their majority and not be able to pass policy. But, you know, as far as your actual career is concerned, as the average Democratic politician, if you don't have a kind of overarching vision of what you want to accomplish with your power and you're just there to be there, then, you know, you just, the problems that we think about on the left and problems that keep us up at night aren't things that you're all that concerned with. I think there is a kind of careerist aspect to Democratic politics that seems a little bit stronger. I mean, not to say that Republicans don't have careers too, but like for us, it doesn't seem like most Democrats are there with a kind of active
zeal. I mean, they're not zealots.
For why they're there. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think, but this seems to me to also, and you know, I guess it's been a 5-year trip for me to blame the voters, but this also feels like a problem or a dynamic, I should say, that is replicated amongst the voting population. I mean, you know, you could describe conservatives as being sort of like, you know, with a Masada complex, that there is always a demon at the door that that is threatening them. All politics are incredibly urgent to them. And it seems like, broadly speaking, I don't think this is an issue, you know, almost definitionally of people who identify as leftists or even progressives at that point. But broadly speaking, you know, people who sort of like liberal, you know, left of center politics do not feel that urgency. And, you know, to the extent that there's just the idea of a primary threat on the right is far more intense than it is, I mean, I should say in the Republicans than it is in the Democratic Party. And that's a function of not of the party. That's a function of the voters, because at the end of the day, you know, and obviously Republicans, there's a lot more money to fan the flames of that voter discontent on the right, because you have people to the right, whether it's, you know, you have just billionaire after billionaire these days who are going to fund it, whether it's, you know, it was the Koch brothers or Mellons or, you know, whoever it was at any given point. And, you know, Mercer's now, or, you know, whoever the latest du jour is. But they will fund these movements where we don't have the same dynamic center left on the Democratic Party from a voting perspective. Yeah.
I think that's right. Although I think that we shouldn't give short shrift to the amount of money that also exists in Democratic politics. It doesn't seem to do anything.
Well, that money is not. That's not money that challenges the Democratic Party. It reinforces the Democratic Party. Right. Whereas you had the Koch brothers set up an entire different, like, sort of voter file project
to influence the Republicans and how they would end up doing their politics. Whereas our money is there to prop up the existing. The existing stable of people, and to tell ourselves that we're doing a great job. You know, if we invested in actual ideological formation, conservatives actually had to build out a constituency for conservatism, you know, with that money. And if we were to do the same on climate, on healthcare, on unions, go into communities that don't necessarily agree with us, but invest in, you know, messengers and institutions that would gradually over time pull people to our side, I think we'd actually start seeing some change in our politics. But again, conservatives take it for granted that this is stuff that you have to do, and Democrats don't really seem to think this is part of their job at all, which means everything kind of falls to the left. I don't have a whole lot of hope that they're going to see the light and start engaging politics in visionary ways. It's just kind of our responsibility.
When you survey that, that landscape, are unions really the best shot at sort of reinvigorating or developing that? Because that seems to me to be the biggest difference when we look back to where we were the last time we had that type of popular movement on the ground. It was basically labor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. These are institutions that, beyond providing material benefits to workers, are very important. We've seen inequality rise partially on the basis of the decline of unions. But beyond that, they socialize people into politics. You would come in, you'd see yourself in political community with your fellow workers, understand that you had a kind of shared interest, even if the other people were very different from you in this or that way. You learned about elections, you learned about policy issues. The unions took their resources and then backed progressive policies in Washington. So, historically, a lot of democratic power and a lot of the progress that we were able to make in America obviously sat on the basis of having strong unions. And I think that they have to be part of the solution here. Although, I think that the difficulty here is the Republicans have done so much, understanding everything I've just said, to weaken them and to make it more difficult to organize. And so I think we're at a point now where we have to start thinking creatively about reviving traditional unions, but also finding other ways that we can build worker power and put workers in community with each other. Again, sometimes that looks like traditional unions, but there are other things that we could maybe experiment and try implementing, including in the workplace, right? So I've become really, really invested in democratizing work, creating institutions within work that get workers to talk with each other and solve problems together by law. Whether or not you have a union, maybe there are things we can institute as a matter of statutes, like works councils, other things that they have in Europe, that create some of those structures for people to engage with on a regular basis. But I think labor power and creating forums where people are coming together on a regular basis at work is part of the solution here. I think that this is the political infrastructure that we've used to have and that we kind of lack, and we're seeing the impact of that.
I mean, it's also the most obvious in some respects and the most sort of I guess insulated from disruption, because you can't, if you stop your workers from showing up to work, you've harmed yourself in that instance. And if they're organizing in fashions that aren't necessarily that are I guess focused on political power and just simply organizing and creating alliances, if people could understand the value of that without even necessarily the short-term material gains that are associated with it, that to me seems like pretty powerful and very, very difficult to undermine, because how do you undermine that?
Yeah. And the other thing too I've been thinking about a lot is to the extent that Democrats seem like they stood for anything in this past election, they stood for our democracy, in quote. They stood for, or tried to make it seem like they stood for democratic institutions, democratic governance. And I think a lot of people heard all of that and said, I don't know what democracy has really done for me. It doesn't seem like it's worked in my interest in Washington. It seems like the rich get their way. What is the value in democracy actually? And what does it have to do with, me making my rent or me paying my medical bills and so on?
Ben Rhodes wrote a piece in the Washington Post about that. I can't believe I've cited Ben Rhodes as much as I have over the past month. But
we're all shocked by this for ourselves, yes.
But that was largely his point. Is he had seen that internationally. This idea of going around, you're promoting something, and people are just like, "Is that the thing we've had now? Because that's not working for me."
Right. But I think I say this to say. To make democracy stick for people, you need to give it a kind of material grounding and have people understand how it benefits them in very concrete ways. I think one of the easiest ways to do this is to tell people, look, a union is democracy. Like, you're getting together with your fellow workers. They're often products of literal elections, right? And when you're in a union and you work together with other people and you come to collective decisions that make your working conditions better, that elevate your pay, this is, I think, a way that people can begin to see democracy as a system of values that actually means something concretely, materially for them. They go to the polls and say, democracy isn't just this kind of abstract thing that my high school teacher told me was important. It is the way that I got my last raise. It is the way that I addressed the working condition that's bothering me. And so I have more of a connection to it as a system of values than I would have otherwise, right? And this is one of the reasons why I think bringing democratic values and bringing democratic thinking into the economy is so important. It sustains people's faith and willingness to defend democratic ideals, and it grounds them in something more than just abstraction. And I think that's really, really important.
What are the odds on any of our Democratic elected officials picking up on that short term?
Short term, I think 0. But I think, again, like I was saying, I don't think that we can kind of just sit around and wait for Democrats to come to reason. Like, we've done enough waiting. If the bombshell in our politics that is Donald Trump hasn't shaken people out of their complacency and shaken people out of their old habits, I don't know what will.
Right.
So I think it's ultimately up to people on the left to build out left politics, build a constituency on the left by taking these ideas directly to the American people. Some of that is creating alternative media venues like this show. But I think it's also, more broadly than that, thinking about ways in which, there are aspects of the left that aren't connecting or haven't connected with certain people. If you have somebody in your life that voted for Donald Trump, think for yourself really deeply about, like, what is the argument that would pull that person to a more left position on healthcare or immigration or unions? Like, what are the things that they care most about, and how can you sort of message for the left in ways that resonate with them? I tell people this all the time if they're young. If your parents are not on the left, if you prefer the left than your parents, think about what arguments you could make, and what messaging you could come up with that would bring that kind of person to your politics. I think that we've done a lot of, talking to ourselves in the last decade or so, and I think that's generated a lot of positive energy. I think that we've accomplished a lot as a movement, but we do need to grow it. And I don't think growing it is a matter of capitulating to the right on social issues. It's not a matter of capitulating to the right on immigration. I think it's about thinking creatively about the ways in which we can make our ideas resonate in new ways with new people. And for me, the thing I've come to focus on is this democracy idea. If you really, really care about it, that doesn't just mean resisting January 6th. It doesn't just mean resisting Trump as an authoritarian, although those things are very, very important. It means taking seriously the fact that in the spaces where we spend about a third of our lives and we derive our livelihoods at work, we have no democratic agency, none. And if we care about democracy because it's a means by which we give ourselves some control over the conditions that shape our lives, that should be appalling to us. And in fact, our lack of power in the economy and at work is something that feeds into the power of the right and that corrupts our politics, So, I think that there's a way in which you can get liberals who have been very, very invested in this democratic conversation to think about it in ways that are more materially grounded. And that would also help us sell democracy, or sort of bring people to care about democracy who, weren't bought into the argument in November. And I think that's going to be important moving forward. So I don't think Democrats are going to do this in the near term, but I think that we as a movement and we as the left should.
It does feel like we are, and I say this, relative to, let's say, the 80s and the 90s, and maybe the aughts as well. Uniquely, we're in a unique temporal context where demonizing corporations and billionaires and just tying in that last element of we need more democracy in the workplace. Just that concept in and of itself seems like we're half a click away from that, and the table's been set, and now we just need to bring people to the table on some level.
Yeah, that's the hope. It's worth a shot. We don't have very much left to lose at this point, but I think, this is the risk, and this is the daring thing to try. I think it substantively matters. I think it helps us address inequality. But again, the political hole that we're in, I think, can be plugged in and moved out of with this kind of thinking. So,
Osita Nwanevu, thanks so much for your time today. We will put a link to The Right of the People, Democracy and the Case for a New American Founding at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. Looking forward to reading that, and hopefully we'll talk to you many times before August. But thanks so much for your time today.
Always great to be on. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will maybe take some calls, we'll read some IMs, we'll play some funny videos,
clips.
And but also some sad videos. Donald Trump is upset about his thing. So just a reminder, if you want this show commercial free, we had a bunch today, become a member. Join themajorityreport.com. You not only get the free show free of commercials, you also help the show survive and thrive. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. Here is the Majority Report blend with the 20th anniversary version of the Majority Report blend. I mean, it's not technically our 20th anniversary anymore. I guess it's, but what are you going to do? We'll switch it at 40 years. But justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Emma, ESVN.
Yesterday, Bradley and I spoke a little bit about the Fox Sports lawsuit, what's going on with the Raiders and their coaching search. And then we gave our previews for the wild card round, which I repeatedly called the divisional round incorrectly on the show yesterday. We've got a lot going on. YouTube.com/ESVN show.
All right, quick break. Fun half.
Left Reckoning. Real quick.
Sorry.
Yeah, Matt and David on Left Reckoning this week were joined by Luke Savage, friend of the show, writer and co-host of Michael and Us, to discuss the state of Canadian politics, Trudeau's resignation, what it means for Poilievre and the rest of the Conservatives in Canada. Also, they spoke with Amina Sheikh, a union organizer, to talk about how to organize with people who hold different views than you do. Kind of similar to what Osita was discussing as well. YouTube.com/Left Reckoning for that, and Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to access the post game there.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow.
What? What is that going on?
It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomiki.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound.
Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm going to go throw up.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge met.
Positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35.
35.
501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400. $1,900.
654 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like
Yeah.
everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report, fun half, casual Friday.
So casual that you're wearing a long sleeve t-shirt. I mean,
Yeah.
what a disgrace, to be honest.
Colt Dog. Sam, today is my 30th birthday. May I get a shofar? Yes, you may.